Hey, everybody. I'm here today with my close friend and fellow e-commerce executive, Brendan Gardner-Young. Brendan is the current COO and former CTO of Thrive Causemetics, one of the nation's leading beauty brands. It's not only a successful business-wise, but it's purpose-driven, having donated over $500,000 to LA wildfire relief, not wildlife, and millions more to so many causes over the past few years. Brendan, you and I talk all the time about tech, e-com, Shopify, AI, company culture, so many different things. And we both run companies north of 100 employees. So I wanted to kickstart things today around working environments. One of the things that we went through at Anatta in 2020 was we had everybody in office in Charleston, everybody in office in Bangalore, and people in office in LA. And as the kind of environments changed, people went remote. There were certain good things about like being remote and seeing that side of the life. But also on the flip side, we noticed that we were losing the collaborative environment and the things we could do in office. And I still feel like there's a lot of benefits to the in-person side of the world. Can you tell me about we've spoken a couple times about like how you guys also transitioned through those stages? But what I'm more than anything interested in is like what have you seen as like the benefits and what's like good about the in-office environment versus the remote and what you've experienced with your time running operations at Thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks for having me. Always good to talk with you. We do talk about this stuff all the time, tech and more. In office versus virtual is interesting. So we had a similar story where before the pandemic, we were one in Seattle at the real early start, but then in Los Angeles, and we had our core team in Los Angeles. And it was interesting at that time because we were a slightly smaller company, and you kind of had that like early camaraderie that you had between team members. You knew people were going to jump in and like help out. You knew that they were going to be going kind of outside their job description in order to like make it work for the business and step into new things. And then we had the pandemic, just like everyone else, and went 100% virtual in just a couple days. So we already had the systems ready to go. That time, from a D2C perspective, was major growth, major challenges, but also at the same time, a lot of hiring for us. And we saw, or at least I saw, a shift in how the teams interacted and how we could work. Obviously, everything going over Slack and Zooms and Asana, and like we do all that. But over the years of doing that, there was somewhat of a disconnect to the actual like physical products. Like I've got like our mascara here and whatnot, right? And like when we start talking about developing the physical products, we really struggled to feel the same connection to those physical products from a team member perspective as we were fully remote. And so we made that decision to come back into the office and bring people back into the office. And I'd be lying to say it wasn't painful to do that. It was something that was a lot of over communicating, a lot of like big business decisions, and a lot of risk, honestly, of just trying to lead a team through so much change there where there might have been individual impacts. There might be, just a pattern of, working from home and doing that. And so we made that decision, and it took us a while. It took us over a year to really continue to not only hire, but work on getting teams back together. And I think fast forwarding to today, we have so many team members that are here, that are in the office with us 4 days a week, 5 days a week. And I can just see the level of trust that's built between team members. I see the ability for our team members to know who to go to for what in order to push projects along, in order to make sure that we are all working as one team rather than these like disparate teams that we used to do from a virtual perspective. And so we see just like a level of trust that we didn't get before. And it feels like that time before the pandemic where your coworker, your colleagues, how they are working, and you know how to really get work done with them and be doing meaningful work and together.
Awesome. I love that answer. Thanks for breaking that down. I'm going to do a quick follow up on that. When you, Brendan, talked about like missing the feel of the product because you guys are a product company, there's an association with kind of like being around the product, seeing it get used, seeing kind of like the overall product experience that comes out of it. And what I hear you saying is that like if you're remote, you're not really getting to chance to like see that, but also with new product launches and things like that, nobody really gets a feel unless you're physically sending it out to everybody. But even if you do, there's still some loss of that touch. So it feels like that collaboration that would happen in person when you were all around that experience and that culture is what kind of gets missing. Is that what I'm hearing right?
Yeah, for sure. Like we used to have like celebrations, right? We had the whole team, almost like an all hands type moments. Like we are launching this new product. Everyone gets to touch and feel it. Everyone gets to understand how they're going to market it, like get excitement for that launch. And like, so we had that before going into the time when we were all remote. And just like you said, we did do the things there. We sent the products to employees so that they had them, and we would do a virtual launch party. We would, but it just didn't have the same feel, and that was one of the missing links. And I think that impacted our ability to launch products well and execute well to those plans, because part of part of building things and putting it out in the world is the not only the anticipation of launching it, but also like knowing the peaks and valleys and challenges that you had to overcome in order to get to that point. And we see that here on a daily basis with our other colleagues in different teams, right? So if we take product development, who's developing the actual product, their timelines are way earlier than my e-commerce team ever touching the website and building out a landing page and building out the what the product page looks like. But the e-commerce team today sees the product development team working on those projects that are coming, not even in 2025, 2026, and they see them testing those, and they're coming around and they're asking, hey, can you try this one out? And that was a missing link there. And I think one other thing that I noticed is I don't think it's only physical products. The physical ones are just easier to use as an example. I also saw a disconnect from a e-commerce website, even the systems, the software that we chose to integrate together. We used to all sit in the same room, right? I would look behind and I would look at a web product manager. I would have a developer. I'd have a UX UI designer, and we would be assessing, well, what search partner do we want? What recommendations are we going to do? Let's test that. Let's look over each other's shoulders as we're testing it out. Is that really right? Should we pull in a marketing person that knows what products pair well together or not? And like, those were some of the missing conversations that we had when we were having before we were remote. And then we went remote, and it was like, well, now do you bring that person into a Slack huddle and talk about it more? It's like hard to see over the same shoulder. So that was also missing too on the e-commerce and kind of technical side.
If you're if we're thinking about like companies that like are Shopify, where they're doing things like bursts where they bring people together for like a specific period of time, if there's companies out there that can't do the full in office, but they want to get the benefits of like in office type of environment, what's your suggestion? Is there any guidance that you would have of like knowing that they're pretty much going to stay remote, but they also need to have some collaboration environments? And I'll give you some context for us. We feel that workshops are really important. So with our clients, when we need to like spend time, we can't, if just spending time completely remote, we end up wasting a couple weeks if we don't compared to if we just went in person, sat down with them and got some key decisions being made and workshopped a few things. Have you seen certain things like that work when you're kind of in the between the stages between remote and fully in office?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Shopify in their bursts, and I've interacted with a lot of other companies, whether they're agencies or whether they're software, doing different things. One of the things that we actually, at least on the brand side, really appreciate is when a partner of ours wants to come to our office for a day and just like maybe be part of a couple meetings if they can, and like kind of just see like the day-to-day work and sit down with us and work with us. I know not everyone can do that necessarily, but I think my point there is maybe something around bursts, but it also involves some level of customers, and getting closer to customers and getting exposure to like, I love it when I get to get in the same room as a Klaviyo product team in order to work on what is the next thing coming from Klaviyo. Does that work for us from a customer perspective? And maybe I'm shoulder to shoulder with another, beauty company and a supplement company and whatever else, and we're all saying like, this is the same problem. Let's go solve this together. I'm not directly answering your question there, but I'm saying like the burst plus like something to get closer to customers. I think if you're remote, it's like you're so far from them, you got to find some way to get and make some human connection there.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm gonna switch topics. To AI. One of the advice recently Brendan and I got that I think I was sharing with you on our last conversation is like, hey, stop talking about AI. Stop like reading things about how AI can benefit you. Just start using AI. And one of the things that I loved about our conversations was that you started telling me about just how you're using it. And that was awesome because I didn't want theoretical AI conversations. I think there's way too many of them, and it makes no difference like how people feel about what AI is going to do for the industry. All we care about is like, let's just start using it and see what comes out of it. And there's a few different use cases that you told me about. One was with like contract negotiations. One was with customer service. Can you tell me about like how you're actually as an executive using AI, you specifically, and then if your team is using it as well?
Yeah, me specifically, I have a tab open all the time on my, like I got two monitors here. One of them always has some tab open of one of the AI services. And it's not necessarily to say I need to be relying on it or I need to be running everything through it necessarily, but I kind of use it as my second opinion on everything. It's like another voice on the side to say like, well, I'm going to ask and see like what it comes up with there. And maybe it gives me a better idea, or maybe it's a brainstorm partner. So that, usually for me is ChatGPT. But we're also testing out Google and any other ones that we tried, their Perplexity from a
Yeah,
search perspective. Um, but I think like what I tell my team is we want to invite AI to the table on any conversation that we can. It doesn't need to be like the
mm,
leading voice, but it is a great partner in order to validate either what you're saying is the right path or to ask it questions and come up with more ideas and whatnot.
mm,
So that's something that we do often. Yeah, the contract thing is a interesting piece with loaded in business terms that we really care about into like a
yeah,
custom built GPT. And that's our first pass contract review. It doesn't catch everything. It's not a lawyer. It's not catching every little last detail, but it helps us from a negotiating perspective. It helps us from a terms perspective. It helps us catch things that are, might be passed over from a search perspective in the contract.
yeah,
And it gives us some level of peace of mind with it. We have a lot of other initiatives from an AI perspective that we can go into. I think that I look at it like a tool in a tool shed. It's not the thing that's going to overtake something completely with it. I think that I want my team to be very AI capable, and it's like I think we talked about it a little bit. It's almost like becoming a painter or playing a guitar or something. You don't just pick it up and you're
yeah.
good at it. I think that it takes consistent practice, and it's almost like more of a creative effort in order to get better at the prompting and at using it and thinking that way in order to ask it good questions. Because if you don't ask it good questions, you're not going to get good answers back for it helping you out.
Yeah, well, Brendan, what I love hearing you say, and it's a different way of looking at it, is like you said, inviting them to the room. So it's like I'm imagining like in a conference room, I have my core executive team that I rely on and I get advice from, but it's just another one of those people in the room. And you're just like, hey, I have this question or I have this going on, and they're listening and also offering their advice. But it's up to you to decide whether you want to take that or what you want to do with it. But you're using it as another voice in the room who has access to a lot more information and being able to provide that information to you during meetings. I'm guessing also during, as you were saying, contract reviews, basically anything that you could be doing. It's almost like your partner on the side that's kind of either double checking your work or you're asking it questions because you need some help for something, or you're using it for other scenarios. Is that kind of how I'm saying? Because you talk about having it as a second monitor for you, so you kind of always have that
Mhm.
open as like kind of there listening in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's yeah, like the meeting. I know a lot of people use the AI meeting notes capability,
yeah,
right? But like, think about how much words are said in an hour-long meeting. If you can afterwards prompt it and say, like, give me an executive summary of what this was. Did you pick up any action items? What are those action items?
yeah,
What if it can pick up your name when you're talking or a person that is you? What was assigned to me? What did I commit to potentially with it? That just it closes that feedback loop faster.
yeah,
But I don't trust that that's always going to give me something that is useful necessarily, right? It's not like I'm just like
yeah,
taking what the output is and saying, okay, cool, I got to go take that direction. But as a thought partner on the side, it is allowing me to expand my brainstorming, expand my ability to think, right? If we're thinking about how to better sell a product, let's just say, and I can give us some context around what that product is and what type of audience we think would resonate with and whatnot. I could just prompt it to say, hey, give me five more ideas, and I can say, I don't like any of those five, give me five more again.
mm,
And before long, it's giving me a ton of ideas, and maybe a couple of those stick, and it is something that we can go actually action on.
yeah.
And it's no different than having a brainstorm session with a bunch of employees, but it's done with a AI right next to us too.
In the type of work that you do, Brendan, like when people send you like a bunch of different AI tools, be like, hey, have you seen this? Have you tried this out? What's like the first reaction towards that? Like, do you actually go try it out, or do you like read about it? Like, how do you choose like which AI tool you're gonna like go with? Because they seem like they're growing out of the ground right now. There's so many popping up left and right.
They are.
Yeah,
No, I am much more cautious, I would say. But I I think I've always been that way. We're very
Yeah.
dependent on our software partners and our agencies to help be an extension of our team. That's one thing I've always said is that any software that we choose partner and any agency that we're working with, we treat them like they are part of they're Thrive Cosmetics employees at the end of the day, and we expect that in return because we know that those companies and those agencies are better at what they do oftentimes than what we can do from a core perspective, and we want to treat them that way. From an AI perspective, I've got a good network of other CTOs and other people. I'll always bounce ideas off of them to say, hey, have you heard of this? Is it working? And my question's always the same. Is it actually driving business results? Because I've seen a lot of these solutions. I'll give you an example of one funny thing that I do is when I get a new one sent to me, I will go into the Wayback Machine sometimes and I will look at their landing page from 2 years ago and I will see, did they brand it and just change it onto AI onto their software and whatnot. And
Right.
that's usually a telltale sign of okay, it's just it was an add-on with it versus someone that built from the ground up AI. And those are the more interesting use cases for me because that's kind of the potential next wave if it's the right solution.
Yeah.
That would be interesting for us. We use, and a lot of companies use, customer service, customer experience, AI
Yeah.
chatbots. We use one of those. It's called Sienna, and we have a good partnership with them. They are
Yeah.
pushing the limits of how to service customers well, but not try to do everything. They're very niche with the answers that they are giving and the approach that they're taking into taking over more tickets, but taking over the tickets that the AI should do. We work really closely with them, and the software that they built on top of it is something that is really helpful for us. So when we do find our solution, we go really deep with it, and then we just suss out from a business value perspective, is it really worth it for us or not? And that's honestly what I see behind all leaders. They're all asking, is this actually giving us any business value? Is it better for customers? Is it
Yeah.
better for margins? Is it better for driving revenue? Because if it's not answering a yes on any of those three things, then it's a waste of time.
100%. And I think, our business value is so vital when making any of our decisions, even when it comes to tech. So as when you're running a CTO for your company, a lot of the things that come out of conversations around road mapping, there's kind of two ways to kind of go about road mapping when you're doing your yearly plans. One is coming up with hey, here's all the technology we need and things we need to do. Let's put that in. Or the opposite is business objectives. Hey, this is what we're trying to achieve as a company, or these are our KPIs. How do we go about doing it? For you guys, and kind of running ops now and being the COO of Thrive, how are you guys thinking about road mapping for the year? How do you construct things based on business value?
We break down. So top line, just like other companies, will have certain targets that we're going for. And
Yeah.
then I really like to empower individual teams to be autonomous in how they're going to go help us achieve those numbers.
Mm.
So, my operations team might roll up into more of a profitability goal, right? And they might be looking at how do I be more efficient with the shipping times or the shipping rates or the operational value inside of the warehouse in order to make it so that we can roll up and meet one of our bigger pillar goals. And they'll be coming up with those goals, and then they if they have the autonomy and the responsibility of it, we're big on giving people full responsibility in order to go meet those goals that they think they can hit and be ambitious with it.
Mm.
And that might be very different than my e-commerce team, which is looking at what big bets they can place today potentially with extensions of the website or expansions or swapping out large systems in order to say, well, maybe they won't make an impact in the next 3 to 6 months, but they're placing some of our big bets for something that'll impact later on in the year or next year, and they get to choose what big bets they're making there according to the roadmap. So it's almost like each
Yeah.
individual team is running with their own roadmap. They got to get buy-in from other teams in order to support that.
Yeah.
And that's rolling up into larger goals that we'll set at the start of the year.
It's really interesting because there's a lot of companies who would give the full roadmap to a team and then their team is executing. But what you're saying is instead of giving the actual roadmap to the team, you're giving them their core goals and their business objectives, and then the teams can figure out whichever way they want to accomplish that. It's really up to them because you're giving that level of autonomy to them.
Yeah, I mean, Look, those teams are looking at the daily operational metrics at a lower
Yeah.
level, right? They're almost
Yeah.
they are more familiar with the systems, what is achievable, what's achievable with the team you have today, what are our opportunities, what are our risks. Those teams know better in that sense. Do you need
Yeah.
a leader or leaders overseeing like, okay, what direction it's going to take? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the bottoms up approach to making them, not just achievable, but like maybe a slight stretch on like what was possible, I think needs to be determined by those teams. Because if they're getting goals that they feel like aren't as um, realistic or a stretch, or they like look, teams need to be pushed and individuals need to be pushed, but
Yeah.
there's a fine balance to strike there. And when we look at, well, I guess when I look at what really leads to employee satisfaction. I think that autonomy in a role, in a job, and then responsibility of that job. So being able to act independently, but also being responsible to be able to go achieve those goals is two of some of the biggest things to job satisfaction, no matter if that's a entry level employee all the way up to an executive level employee. And
Yeah.
I really want to empower team members to go dream a little bit and then go try to achieve those stretch goals.
I love that. It's a very different way to kind of run a company and run like kind of from a vision and goal perspective. The autonomy just gives you so much more freedom as a teammate, but also gives you like you feel that the company's trusting you to do your job, which is amazing. Brendan, last topic, and this is one I'm really passionate about, which is and it's a funny topic. It's site speed.
Mm-hmm.
What's your feelings on like how important site speed is? How do you monitor it? How does it come up in your product development cycles? Like, tell me about what your feelings are when it comes to site speed.
Interesting. We've gone through different waves of this. I think it's super important.
Yeah.
I have actually seen there's a tool we have used for years called Speed Curve.
Yes.
And that
I love
tool
that tool.
actually, yeah, it's a great solution. It's got the sampling that shows you basically like per page site speed wise what the conversion rate is, and what the lift you would get potentially if you were to improve site speed a bit.
Yeah.
I don't take those reports as face value of if you hit this number, then suddenly your conversion rate will suddenly be, you
Yeah.
know, whatever, however many points higher necessarily. But I do believe
Sure.
that there is a, the foundational numbers, let's just call it under the Google like core vitals, that is super important to get to from a website perspective. And I think that one thing that we saw really early on was that people didn't do the best job of explaining the impacts of site speed because oftentimes we're sitting here with some of the latest like iPhones and we've got,
Yeah.
here in, Los Angeles, we've got great cell phone connections and whatnot. And so
Yeah.
the testing on the slower mobile devices is something that just we found that teams were just missing. And so we would
Mhm.
mandate testing on a lot of those devices, and even down to the point of when we do a release in Shopify to a staging theme, we would be running synthetic tests on those staging themes in order to say, did it impact site speed at all on like a mobile device that had like a medium connection potentially with it? So I think it's super
Yeah.
important there. And it's funny, before the pandemic, we used to have actual like table that had testing devices all over it. We would go into Google Analytics and buy like the oldest, slowest devices that had somewhat of a good user base to it. And then it'd
Yeah.
be like digitest on this small, like super small screen device
Sure.
yet using
Yeah.
that browser to see how this potential page looks. And that was
Yeah.
eye opening. We'd be sitting there as a team looking at this device loading super slow and being like, whoa, okay, this just doesn't look like, what we were testing on. And it really,
Yeah.
the physical product of having it on that phone actually really hit home of how important it was to meet those benchmarks from a site speed perspective.
When you guys like do releases, like new feature releases and or new product releases, is site speed kind of looked at? Like, do you guys use the budgeting capabilities in Speed Curve, or did you used to kind of use that as like, hey, if after a launch site speed decreases to like roll back or do anything of that nature?
Used to, yes. So
Yeah.
used to do that.
Okay.
Used to have notes with it too. We went off
Yeah.
of it for a little bit,
Yeah.
just cost wise and what was going on, and we actually are just getting back
Sure.
onto it. We also use a tool called Track.js for any JavaScript errors that are on the site. So a little bit more detailed JavaScript reporting in order to make sure that we don't, have any issues there. I also know
Yeah.
this conversation is very different from a headless versus not headless perspective and
Yeah.
all that stuff as well. But foundationally, right? Like slow speeds
Yep.
are not great, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, we're always looking to improve that, because I think the budgeting is a very, very important thing in the process of, especially a mature brand like us that has a lot of releases, a lot of changes. I think it's one of the
Yeah.
biggest things that you can do, because if you have those, I'm a big believer in guardrails. Our speed curve budgets would go straightly into our Slack. Hey, we're over budget for the last 2 hours of JavaScript errors on this specific PDP. What's going on this one here? And we could pinpoint a
Yeah.
problem very quickly to be like, oh, we didn't know that this thing changed it, but now we know. Let's go change the idea there. So the budgets were super important to us.
Yeah, and that's what I love, like about speed curve and tools like that, is it's actually giving you like the film strip view, and it's giving you the exact user experience that's happening on all these devices, because it actually gives you the view of that, and it tells you like, hey, what's the experience look like? So it says like half a second in, 1 second, 2 seconds, like what someone's seeing and interacting with. And I feel that that's so much more vital than the score that you get. Hey, I'm a 70 versus a 30. And one of the things that I get really irritated by, like I get actually emotional on this, is when people are like, "Hey, my site scored at 85, we're better," and it's like, you can score 85 and your site can still load really slow. Like it's
Mhm.
85 and that doesn't really correlate. Like the site speed itself is what makes the biggest difference in the world. The site score is more of a grade factor. It's kind of like you're in school and it's like, hey, like this is a straight A student. That doesn't mean that they're the smartest kid in the class. It just means that they know how to do tests really well. But that doesn't indicate the level of intelligence in that. And I feel the same way about speed. Speed, you see it directly from like what you see in the actual film strip view and the user experience that you can see on Speed Curve with those budgets. And that's why I love those tools, because just like you're saying during releases, one of the things we found is that it's not always related to code. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
related to content. So the team will upload like a big, huge 4 megabyte or 8 megabyte image for like a product image that could have been done in 400 kilobytes or in 40 kilobytes. And now that page is loaded and you're like, what happened? What's causing this? And you can see it right there, like this massive image file. And you're like, there's the culprit, go upload a new one. But you find that out within like, if you have it feeding into your Slack messages, like you said, you find out right away and you see that this big red marker saying you're over budget. And then you can go look
Yep.
at it and dig into it and be like, hey, roll this back or go make this change. And it's so fast versus your site starts slowing down. People start like your conversions start going down and you can't figure out what the reason is. And this is, to me, like you said, it's not a indicator of how high conversions are going to be, but it's almost like you're minimizing a variable. And if you can always keep speed out of it, then nobody can complain that site speed was the issue for conversions or your site not working. It's just saying, hey, we're meeting our budgets, we're good, like we're actually clear.
Yeah. Well, just a straight number almost it takes out the consumers out of the equation almost, or the human that is like
Yeah.
interacting with the site, right? It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
cool, 85, like you said, for a Google Lighthouse, and it loaded in whatever, 2.2 seconds. Well, if me and you pulled up the same web page and we said 3, 2, 1, go, do you think it's loading up in 2.2 seconds? Like, no, it's gonna,
No.
yours
Yeah.
might be a little bit faster, mine might be 3 seconds slower with it. It just like the human element of it is very different. So the timestamps, like, or the loading with the windows, like you talked about, is
Yeah.
super important to see that, and just like being curious and testing it in real life and just saying like, cool, I'm gonna test it
Yes.
too and just see like what it looks like on my thing. Maybe you pull out your little stopwatch on your phone and like also look
Yeah.
at it together, right? And just to see that.
Sure.
It's like it's almost
Yeah.
like a customer service team coming to you and saying like, this is our average time to respond back to customers, and you're like, okay, let's call that number up and just see like, okay, you're saying a minute, like if we call right now in a meeting, is the team going to pick up in a minute? Is it 2 minutes? Is it 4 minutes? Like, what's the real consumer
Yeah.
point?
Experience.
And it has huge impacts, right? Because stores like us have a ton of sessions and a ton of page views coming, and so it's hard to
Yeah.
even fathom the direct impact to, like you said, a large video or a large piece of content showing up on a web page, and then you have another 100,000 people that are going to load that slow page or longer, right? If like it's a
Yeah.
huge impact on a website, especially with the higher volume like Shopify stores.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Thank you, brother, for hopping on and talking with me. Really, really appreciate it. Love the work that you guys are doing at Thrive Cosmetics. Love you as a human. Again, to spend some time together and become friends. So really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.